the Israeli sky is once again shaking, not only with the wail of sirens or the impact of missiles, but with the fear that creeps silently from technology centers that were previously considered untouchable. This time is not a military headquarters that is targeted, but a symbol of the world's digital dominance, such as the Microsoft Office. An attack that not only hit the building, but also hit global confidence in the limits of modern warfare. We will discuss it in full, starting from the physical attack, the digital impact, to the international response that now focuses directly on the heart of the technology war in the Middle East. Part 1: Iranian attack on technology facilities. Quoted from The Guardian, Iran launched a ballistic missile into the Beersheba area, targeting a technology area that includes Microsoft's office and R&D center. This attack caused fires on several roads near the office. Authorities said there were no casualties, but the property damage was quite significant. This incident shows the expansion of the conflict to the technology sector, not just military targets, the initial impact on civilian infrastructure. Quoted from Reuters, the Iranian missile penetrated air defenses and caused a number of vehicles and buildings near the Microsoft office to catch fire. The medical team said there were minor injuries, but there were no reports of fatalities. This incident disrupted the activities of the Beersheba Technology Center. Residents in the region are now beginning to feel vulnerable, even in areas previously considered relatively safe. Part 2: The Israeli military response. Quoted from The Times, the Israeli military responded with airstrikes on Tehran targeting Iranian nuclear and military facilities. This operation involved attacks targeting the SPND and Iran's nuclear research complex. The Israeli government argued that this was to stop the escalation of Iranian missiles and attacks. However, this attack then triggered a wave of retaliatory attacks and escalation of Iranian missiles. Quoted from The Times, Iran launched missiles at various Israeli cities including Tel Aviv and Haifa, causing hundreds of people to be injured. More than 240 people were injured in last week's attacks, including an earlier attack on Soroka Medical Center. The missile attack entered a civilian area, triggering massive air raid sirens. Israel reported a defensive response, but some projectiles managed to penetrate. Part 3: The impact on Soroka Medical Center. Quoted from the Economic Times, Soroka Medical Center, the largest hospital in the south, was damaged after being hit by Iranian missiles. Dozens of patients experienced disruption to medical services, with some being transferred to the basement as an emergency measure. The number of injured people reached dozens. However, the hospital is still monitoring the situation. This situation confirms that the conflict is now even targeting civilian health facilities, impacting schools and public areas. Quoted from Wikipedia, the attack on June 16 caused deaths and dozens of injuries in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Bnei Brak. Schools and residential buildings were also affected, causing major disruption to civilian life. Bnei Brak even recorded at least 5 people killed and 90 injured. This attack forced residents to evacuate and caused ongoing anxiety. Part 4: Virtual and digital attacks. Quoted from The Guardian and previous news, there was a massive data leak from the Israeli defense system by an Iranian hacker group claiming to be skilled. Military and personal documents were spread to the internet, adding new pressure in addition to physical attacks. This cyber attack shows a new dimension of the digital warfare conflict. Israeli citizens are now also worried about data security. Diplomatic reactions and G7 initiatives. Quoted from The Guardian, foreign ministers of European countries such as England, France, and Germany held talks in Geneva with Iran to seek de-escalation. The United States gave a deadline of 2 weeks to choose the option of dialogue or military intervention. Calls for de-escalation are growing, but practical and political needs continue to cloud the diplomatic path. The international community fears the conflict could escalate. Part 5: America's role and political pressure. According to The Times, President Trump has given Iran a 2-week deadline to negotiate or face possible U.S. military action, but he has also stressed support for a peaceful solution. Ambassadors and staff from allied countries have begun to evacuate the region. Political pressure is mounting both domestically and globally. Threats from Russia and China. According to The Guardian and The Times, Russia has warned that killing Iran's supreme leader could open a dangerous Pandora's box. China has shown diplomatic support for Iran and called for restraint. This adds to the geopolitical complexity and warns that the conflict could escalate into a global process. Diplomacy between the 3 countries is a key factor in diffusing military tensions. Part 6: Threats to global infrastructure. The UN told The Guardian that the conflict is at risk of a man-made drought in Gaza that could the distribution of water and humanitarian aid. Meanwhile, disruptions to infrastructure in Iran and Israel could affect global energy routes. The international community is watching for escalation pressures that could trigger a spike in oil prices. This crisis is not just military, but also basic humanitarian needs. Israeli citizens' reactions. Israeli society feels extreme anxiety, queues, evacuation of patients to basements, and cancellation of public events. Schools are closed and economic activity is weakened. The sense of security, citizens are shaken because bombs and missiles are coming at them. This shows that civilians, not just the government, bear the burden of the conflict. Part 7. The psychological effects of tension. Israeli trauma services recorded a 350% increase in calls for psychological help after the ballistic missile attacks. The main symptoms are panic attacks, tremors, and severe anxiety among the elderly, children, and families. Citizens have difficulty sleeping and are burdened with severe trauma. There are long-term psychological concerns that could lead to migration or social disruption. Israel's media censorship policy. The Israeli government has imposed strict media censorship. Israeli citizens or media are prohibited from publishing images of attacks or damage. This effort is intended to maintain public morale, but has raised criticism about transparency. Online censorship is also applied to platforms such as X and Snapchat. Criticism arises whether the limits of public safety or courage are threatened. Part 8. Trump's promise of intervention. President Trump reportedly spoke for almost 1 hour and 20 minutes with Prime Minister Netanyahu discussing the possibility of U.S. military support. Trump even cited Iran must surrender unconditionally. Reportedly, he mentioned the location of the Khamenei verse and alerted F-16, F-35 and aircraft carriers in the Middle East. However, the United States military intervention is still under intensive evaluation, operational plans and risks. Analysts warn that if a military tsunami begins, the impact could be wide. Economic disruption, the risk of a long war, and social cracks in the U.S. Comparisons have emerged with Iraq and Afghanistan. There is no clear exit strategy. The UN and European countries urge a pragmatic approach. The world is monitoring whether its diplomacy will beat open war. Part 9. Iran's latest missile technology. According to the Economic Times and Wikipedia, Iran uses the highly maneuverable and fast hypersonic Fateh-1 missile Mach-15, which penetrated the Iron Dome in the 11th wave of attacks. This missile is considered a serious new threat against Israel's modern defenses. The Western Bloc is watching the development of this missile technology. If true, this triggers a re-evaluation of defense strategy. The attack on Microsoft is a signal. Quoted from Reuters and CNN, the attack was deliberately launched at Microsoft's office because of their involvement in supporting Israeli military intelligence and AI. This puts technology companies at the forefront of psychological and strategic warfare. This attack presents a new threat to civilians in the civilian technology sector and IT professionals. Global companies are now worried about becoming targets of geopolitical conflict. The world is waiting for a turning point. The conflict is now at a critical juncture. Physical, digital, and infra wars are playing out simultaneously. G7 diplomacy, Russian and Chinese warnings, and global public pressure are creating a unique momentum. The world is waiting to see if this is the beginning of an open war or an opportunity for a ceasefire. The strategic decisions of major powers will soon determine the future of the region. Attacks on technology facilities like Microsoft and Israel are a loud signal that the world has entered a new phase of warfare. This is no longer about weapons and soldiers, but about data, networks, and the information systems that have governed our lives. When servers are targeted and technology offices are reduced to rubble, no place is truly safe. The world is now watching to see if this was just a one-night stand or the beginning of the most dangerous digital war in modern history.